Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes and be inspired by how they've overcome adversity. My name is Anthony Codispoti, and today's guest is Bob Reddy, owner and strategic partner at Pride Staff Carlsbad. They are a staffing and employment agency that specializes in matching top talent with the right employers in industries like manufacturing, medical devices, and pharmaceuticals. Their mission is to consistently provide client experiences focused on what they value most, while their employee engagement program helps to build strong relationships. Now, over the past 26 years, Pride Staff Carlsbad has earned notable recognitions, including the 212 Degree Award for Superior Performance and 13 President's Circle Awards for Outstanding Growth and Profitability. Bob is a former Navy recruiter, served in a variety of staffing leadership roles, including as a commodore, overseeing all Navy talent acquisition efforts for the Eastern Hemisphere. He also holds an MBA in Manpower Systems Analysis from the Naval Postgraduate School and is currently certified as a senior professional in human resources. With a strong background in solving organizational challenges, Bob brings a wealth of knowledge to our conversation today. Now, before we get into all that good stuff, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Add Back Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. One recent client was able to add over $900 per employee per year in extra cash flow by implementing one of our innovative programs. Results vary for each company, and some organizations may not be eligible. To find out if your company qualifies, contact us today at addbackbenefits.com. All right, back to our guest today, owner and strategic partner of Pride Staff Carlsbad, Bob Reddy. I appreciate you making the time to share your story today.
I appreciate you having me on, Anthony. It's a pleasure and privilege to be here.
All right, so Bob, I want to start by going way back before you were running your own staffing firm. You actually enlisted in the Navy right out of high school. Is that correct?
That's correct. So actually, I think before I could even get into that, I probably need to start a little bit before that to talk a little bit about my first job, which was actually selling newspaper subscriptions. It was for the Baltimore Sun, and it was not the best job. It was my first job, and it was definitely a learning experience. And I also probably should give you some background. I'm first generation son of an immigrant. My mom unfortunately passed away when I was 2, and so I think the two main lessons that my dad imparted on me very early on is that life's not fair and it doesn't owe you anything. You've got to work for what you want out of life. And so with that mindset, I had approached this job and found out I'm pretty terrible at sales. It was so bad that so we'd go out into neighborhoods in a van, canvass the neighborhood, and all come back with our sales slips. Me not with very many, and so our team leader would pull me aside and kind of go through everything, go through my sales, and start asking, so what's the interaction like with the customer? And he said, do you give up after you get the first no? And I usually said yes. If they tell me no, I don't push it any further. He's like, well, you're not doing your job right unless you get 3 no's. And so he would push me out again and encourage me to get 3 no's from every customer before giving up on the sale. This factors in, trust me here. And so I also happened to be kind of a little bit of a weird kid. I think most kids, their senior year, if they find out they only have a couple of classes to graduate, they would have a cake senior year and take it easy. I had an older sister that kind of paved the path for me on this, but I figured with those 2 classes, I could just go to college a year early and take those as 100 classes, get college credit as well as high school credit. So that's what I did. Started college at age 16, and it was in about a little year and a half in to college, right before I graduated from high school, a Navy recruiter started reaching out to me. And again, my mindset from that previous sales experience is he's not going to leave me alone until I give him 3 no's. So I'm going to go into the office, I'm going to give him his 3 no's, and he'll leave me alone. Well, that didn't quite go the way that I thought. As he started asking about what I was doing in college, I told him I was on the pre-med track, and he asked how that was going, and then he said, have you done the math on this? You realize that you still have to complete another 2 to 3 years of college before you can apply to medical school. That's going to be another 4 years, and then additional time. It's going to be quite some time before you can actually practice medical care, start seeing patients. I have an opportunity for you that can have you providing medical care in about 6 months. And we also talked about some of the financial challenges. Having skipped my senior year of high school, I was constantly trying to make sure that I remained scholarship eligible. So I spent a lot of time in the library with books and a few other friends of mine that were in the same situation. But I also had this set of friends where mom and dad were paying for college, and they were kind of on the 8-year program, going to parties every single weekend. And I figured there's got to be some balance where I can have some life experiences and not have to worry about the finances of college. And so this Navy recruiter very astutely picked up on that as a need as well, and basically told me by joining the Navy, I could have college taken care of financially, as well as get me fast-tracked towards medical care. And so I enlisted as a hospital corpsman, and it was actually a little different than what the recruiter said, in that it wasn't 6 months, it was closer to 3 to 4 months. So he was definitely true to his word, and it was a blast.
So what does a hospital corpsman do?
A hospital corpsman provides basic medical care, and so I would say it's closest to probably an LPN, a nurse.
Okay. And so you're learning this, you're providing this service, and at the same time, are you taking college courses, or does that come later?
So by the time I enlisted, I enlisted with about a year and a half of college credits when I enlisted at 17. At my very first command, I don't want to spend this entire interview sharing sea stories or sharing too many stories about my background, but there's a much longer story that got me to Bethesda Naval Medical Center, but it was known as the President's Hospital. And while I was there, in the Navy, the most senior enlisted folks that manage you are called Navy chiefs. And my chief knew that I had pretty close to an associate's degree, and so kept bugging me to go back to college to finish that. As I shared with you before, I was excited to be out of the library, be out from behind books, and actually being able to get my hands dirty with work. So that was kind of the lowest priority, or the least thing I had on my mind.
Okay.
That's actually what led me to the Naval Academy. I got approved for tuition assistance, and was thinking I'm going to be smart about this, and I'm using quotes here, air quotes. I thought I would slow roll this by taking one college course on the weekend, and it just so happened I kept getting assigned for watch those same times that I was approved for college, that one college class. My department head at the time, full bird Navy captain, ended up making a 4-strike phone call to the watch bill coordinator to deconflict it, and resulted in me getting all the worst watches, holiday watches after that. But he pulled me into his office later, and he says, okay, I helped you out in the short term. What's your long-term plan? And I told him, just keep taking college classes and finish off my associates. And he was like, wrong answer. He slid across 2 brochures. one was for Navy ROTC and one was for the Naval Academy. And he said, pick one, pick both, I don't care, but I want to see an application by the end of the week. And really started an application, because it is a much longer, arduous process than that. Having grown up in Maryland, I figured I'll show him. I'll apply to the Naval Academy. I won't get in, and he'll leave me alone, and that'll be the end of it. Well, as it turns out, I got in.
So you got in. You end up, earning your commission through the academy, and from there, kind of looking at your background here, it looks like a pretty remarkable career climb within the Navy. Recruiting, manpower strategy. You served in Iraq. Leading some of the Navy's most critical HR operations. But if I understand correctly, there was the early recruiting role in Minneapolis that I think, you kind of developed a passion for solving manpower challenges. What was that experience? Why did that click for you? Why was it so meaningful?
So that actually was supposed to be a footnote. That was not supposed to be part of a continuing career. So what's not in my bio, what's not in my LinkedIn profile is, I specifically chose FDNF Japan, the USS Cushing, which is a Spruance class destroyer, no longer in service. I chose that to get as far away from the East Coast as I could. As you probably saw, I went to boot camp in Orlando, went to Hospital Corpsman A School in Great Lakes, Illinois, and back to Annapolis at the Naval Academy. Really wasn't much of a join the Navy, see the world experience at that point, and so wanted to get as far away as I could to start experiencing that life I kind of craved. But also I knew it was going to be heavy operational, and I knew it was going to be a challenge, but I also thought what better way to immerse myself as a surface warfare officer in training, and so that was the plan. What I wasn't really prepared for, so I left the Naval Academy about 150 pounds on this frame. I'm about 5'11", and I went on board the ship, just like any new ensign, got seasick, didn't really think much about it. I kept this up for a while and was told, don't worry, it'll be fine, it'll just go away. Throughout my career, I kind of had it impressed on me that I'm not a corpsman anymore, and so I need to focus on being a surface warfare officer. And so I kind of turned that side of my brain off and just kind of trusted, went along with whatever was presented to me. And so I just figured I would get sick over the side and then go back to doing what I'm supposed to do. And at the end of the night, go see Doc. He would pop a lactated Ringer's IV, and I'd get rehydrated and do it all over again. Well, this is not sustainable. And so it got to the point where I had lost about 25 pounds in 20 days. And I was told to go get checked out by a medical doctor on shore. The recommendation at the time was you need to stay behind and gain some weight back. You're about down to 3% body fat. If you lose any more, you're going to be risking brain damage. And the XO on the ship, again, thought he was trying to help me out, found a doctor that would clear me, allowed me to get underway. The new doctor wasn't talking to the corpsman on the ship. They prescribed contraindicating medications. And in July of 1999, I briefly died on board Cushing. I was told that they spent about 30 minutes trying to revive me, and I was medevaced off. The cool thing was I got to ride the bullet train. Didn't really get to see many of the sights in Japan because I was deployed 85% of the time. But from there, I was stashed at CNFJ, and they were trying to figure out what to do with me, and rightfully so, because SWO ensigns, young surface warfare officers, belong at sea. So there aren't too many shore opportunities for you. The two options that were presented to me was Navy recruiting Minneapolis and MEPS Indianapolis. So the military entrance processing station that everybody goes through when they join, that was in Indianapolis. One of those was in Indianapolis, and that was one of the options. The Navy Recruiting District Minneapolis opportunity wasn't really an opportunity per se because it was an 03 billet, a lieutenant billet. I was only an ensign, I was an 01, and so to detail me into a position 2 grades higher than what I'm supposed to be in would require permission from the chain of command. And so I was told you need to call and do an interview from Japan with the executive officer. And if they like you and want to take risk on you and put you into that job, you just need to impress them in the interview. And apparently I did. They decided to take a chance on me, and that's how I got to Minneapolis.
Wow. That's quite a path. So briefly died. That's the part I'm going to have to go back to there. And so was this because basically you're not able to retain anything. You're getting sick all the time, probably throwing off your electrolyte levels.
Yes.
You passed out. Your body just shuts off, like the heart stopped. Like you weren't breathing.
Definitely a downward spiral, and my body just couldn't keep up.
And so, what was that process like to revive you? Obviously, people have told you stories about. Clearly, you don't know. You don't. You weren't aware or conscious at the moment. But what stories did people relate to you?
Oh, they pretty much. So the XO actually same ethnicity as me, Asian Indian, and also Maryland native. And also went to the Naval Academy. So again, really kind of saw him as somebody that I wanted to be eventually. He, I think, immediately had regretted his decision to get me underway. And I was told that it was about as white as the pullover that you're wearing. He was pretty relieved when I was revived, and they were able to get me off the ship as quickly as possible.
Do you think sort of that feeling bad had something to do with, hey, let's make this opportunity available for you to kind of like climb a couple of levels?
No. So he pretty much he felt bad about the situation, but he just said they probably should have screened this sooner, or he thought that it should have been caught earlier. But no, I genuinely think he thought if something ended up in my medical record about not being able to get underway, that would harm my career. And so I think he thought he was doing the right thing. But
no, I get it. It was playing with fire now, looking in the rearview mirror. So you had to, they set up this interview for you. They kind of opened up the door, but you still had to hit this out of the park. You've got to impress these folks. What do you think you did in that interview that really caused them to sit up and take notice?
It's hard to say because, again, looking back, I was an ensign. I don't know that I had much to offer other than that. What I found out after getting there is the billet I went into, I've been gapped for at least a couple of years. Minnesota is one of those places, if you're not from there, most people don't want to go there. It's a pretty harsh winter and a pretty long-lasting winter period. And so it's definitely a hard place to recruit, but it's also a hard place to be outside in. And so the quality of life, I think, perceived by some people isn't a good one. But I was pleasantly surprised when I got there about how much it's definitely a great family atmosphere and definitely a great place. It was a place where both of my daughters were born, and definitely a great place that I'm happy to have been part of.
Do you feel like that? Do you call it a near-death experience or do you call it a death experience? Because the way you put it, you're like, I actually died for a little bit. Has it changed? Do you look back at that point in your life and like, Was there like a flip of a switch, like you view life differently now, kind of a thing?
Absolutely. Yes. So I had been told very early on in my naval career by chiefs, don't be a lifer. Don't plan on making this a career. Do it till it's no longer any fun. And it seemed like odd advice at first, but essentially the advice was don't be so focused on getting good performance evaluations or fitness reports to the point that you're not focused on doing a good job. And I thought that was great advice. But because of the death experience or near death experience, it definitely taught me nothing's to not take anything for granted. Nothing is promised. And much like my dad had advised me, you're going to have to work for everything that you want. It was looking back, it's still, I think, a challenging experience, but it definitely shaped who I am. I think it also gave me a fire to not take any opportunity for granted. I think the easy thing when you consider the odds, there aren't too many people who go from being enlisted to going into the Naval Academy. There aren't too many people who can get into the Naval Academy and then graduate from the Naval Academy. And so I think at this point in my career, I'm not going to lie, I felt a little high on myself. I felt a little invincible. I felt like I can do anything. And I think this really was a humbling experience, but also was a recentering experience. I hope I don't offend anybody, any of the listeners, by talking about this, but faith definitely played a huge role in the way forward.
You say more about that. I want to hear more about your faith and how it's helped you.
Well, I mean, I think when you do come close to realizing there's no way forward, and even after being revived, after being medevaced, realizing how lucky I am to still be alive, feeling how lucky I was to get to Minneapolis, it was pretty sobering to think this is an opportunity to somewhat get back on my feet, but that wasn't the plan. That wasn't the Navy's plan for me. And quite frankly, there really wasn't a way forward. What I mean was that the Navy's plan was, we're going to send you to this recruiting billet, and you're going to finish out your obligation to the Navy, and then we're done. We part ways. You separate from the Navy. That was the plan. I did impress the XO, who later fleeted up to be the CO, and encountered a lot of other officers that would pull me aside and say, "Hey, Bob, we would really like you to stay Navy. Have you ever thought about a lateral transition to another community? And even more so, I'm going to help you out." And each of these officers would then come back to me and say, "Hey, Bob, I looked into this, and if you can't go to C, you're not going to see past 03. You're not going to be able to make it past lieutenant. There's really not much of a way forward. And so when you go out recruiting, make sure you take your resume with you. You really need to think about your civilian options." And so, I probably should mention this as well. A few months before July, in May of '99, I had gotten married, and so my new bride, new to the Navy, new Navy spouse, is enduring this whole experience with me. And when we get sent to Minneapolis, she's from Michigan, and so she's thrilled about the location, but she's still trying to wrap her head around, okay, so the organization that nearly killed my husband now wants him to go out and sell this organization. It's a daunting prospect when you think about it. But for me, going back to faith, I think my mind was really focused on being grateful, but also being very prayerful about the way ahead because I couldn't see. I, I, my first daughter was on her way, and so to know that I had a child on the way, to know that I don't have prospects to continue in a career that I've known since I was 17, turned 18 in boot camp, was pretty scary. It was a scary time.
But obviously, you do decide to stay in the Navy, and you have. I'm going to use the word meteoric rise through the ranks. I think we said in the intro that you were in charge of all recruiting for the entire East Coast. So clearly, I'm going to put words in your mouth. So tell me if I'm right or wrong here. You found a passion. You enjoyed kind of this I don't know, HR aspect of the Navy that you had discovered. Am I right?
Eventually, yes. When I was when the opportunity presented itself in 2001, the Navy stood up a human resources community. So this path didn't even exist prior to me getting stationed in Minneapolis. And again, that's where I can't see that as anything but a God thing. It's definitely not something I could have planned on. But even when that opportunity presented itself, and I was heavily encouraged to apply, I wanted nothing to do with it. I pretty much told my superior officers, if I'm going to do human resources, I think I'd rather do that on the outside than in the Navy. And you don't go to the Naval Academy to become a human resources officer. It was my mindset. You're supposed to be a warfighter, and at least that was my mindset at the time. What I really didn't think through at the time that I know now is there's so much that hangs on the behind the scenes work. Um, Something that I, going back to being a hospital corpsman, something that I found was a talent of mine was venipuncture. Um, and that wasn't a talent I think I was necessarily born with. It's one that I acquired. When you go through hospital corpsman A school, you practice on each other as adults for blood draws and things like that. But I got assigned to pediatrics, and to draw blood on a 3-day-old baby whose are just developing.
Wow.
It was pretty challenging at first, but once I got the hang of it, it was pretty easy to draw blood on adults. And that's the sort of thing I think you don't really think about as a life-saving skill. Most people think about like triage, patient care, or responding to a code, all the exciting things. You're never going to see a poster, highlighting venipuncture for a medic for the medical field. That's just something I think we all take for granted. Human resources is one of those things as well that's behind the scenes. If you do it right, nobody's ever going to take notice. You're never going to see well, maybe you'll never see, I doubt you'll ever see a Navy poster highlighting Navy HR officers. We're actually behind the scenes, and it's a language that most warfighters don't speak. But when they realize, especially the more senior they get, how important manpower and manning are, um, it's an invaluable skill.
And so, at what point did you make the decision that you were ready to transition from the Navy into civilian life?
So that last tour that I did as Commodore, it was a pretty grueling time. I think it was around 2022 when the services, except for the Marine Corps, were in the newspapers or in the headlines for not being able to make their recruiting goals. That was about the time that I got tapped to be Commodore. Unlike most other Commodores, I went straight into the job. Most other Commodores, you start out as the deputy and you fleet up. And I was afforded the opportunity because of my extensive recruiting background and experience. But it was a tough job at the time, and still is a tough job. But
Tough job because you guys weren't making the numbers that you needed to make, or something else?
yes, tough job because we weren't making the numbers. There was a lot of scrutiny on Navy recruiting, and I think in the same way that winning can be infectious, I think losing also can be infectious. And so it was a tough spot um, to wrap our minds around of being able to be successful. I think a lot of folks were focused on all the reasons we couldn't instead of the ways that we could. But I had been there and done that when I went to Minneapolis. Back then, there were 31 recruiting districts, and we were 31 of 31. And I'm happy to say that by the time I had left, we were consistently in the top 10, if not top 5. And so,
wow. What were some of the big levers that you pulled to affect that kind of rise?
I really think it boils down to teamwork. I strongly believe that if you break down the stovepipes and you leverage teamwork, I think there's a lot more that you can accomplish. So specifically, when I was on the officer recruiting side, many of the officer recruiters wouldn't share information, share leads with the enlisted recruiters. And I can say from my own experience, I think typically when you talk to a lot of military recruiters, they're going to talk from their experience, and very few of them have been enlisted and officer, so they can't talk to you about both sides of the fence. When I was put in charge of officer recruiting at Minneapolis, that was another thing. I was the most junior guy at the command, and it was a huge lesson in positional leadership to be in charge of more senior officers as a junior officer. But I was later put in charge of enlisted recruiting simultaneously, so I still managed officer recruiting and enlisted recruiting. And I really worked to try and break down those barriers to make sure that we were sharing information across lines. And I don't know if you've heard of anybody having this experience, but unfortunately it can be a common one where an enlisted recruiter talks to you about joining the military with a college degree and doesn't even talk to you about officer programs. That unfortunately was fairly commonplace until I was put in charge, and we really tried to make sure that didn't happen. Now it's, at least in the Navy, it's policy that you're supposed to be talked to about officer programs if you have a college degree.
Make sure that people know all their options that are available to them. Yeah. It's good to have that transparency. And so how did the opportunity to acquire, because I want to get to kind of more present day stuff, how did that opportunity to acquire the Pride Staff franchise in Carlsbad, California come about?
So it was definitely not a straightforward opportunity. I swore after the commodore job and after retiring from the Navy, I had told myself and my family that I wasn't going to do anything HR, wasn't going to do anything staffing related, was going to do something completely different. And I really tried to make good on that. I did explore a lot of other opportunities and really didn't resonate with any of them. It was doing some exploration with franchises, and then more specifically with Pride Staff. When I came home and told my wife Sally about it, she said, "You really need to pursue that." And I told her, "Well, I thought we agreed we're not doing anything in staffing." She said, you really need to look at this because this is the first time I've seen your face light up with an opportunity that you brought home. So
spouses know, they can see it.
Yes.
They can see it in your eyes. Yeah. Go Absolutely. Ahead. Let's hear more about that.
I really have to credit Sarah Brown. She works with Vetrapreneur, a really great organization. And ultimately, she is who led me to the Pride Staff resale. But an unexpected person in my life, somebody I had served with at NRD San Diego, one of my former senior chiefs, John Naseda, was really a true mentor and friend. He actually owns a rival franchise, staffing franchise, and yet he was so gracious throughout the process to kind of walk me through things. I definitely think without my wife Sally's support, I wouldn't have taken the leap of faith with it, but there's also lots of prayer involved.
No. And so let's see, we're recording this in June of 25. You acquired the franchise in the fall, September of 24. So just under a year, kind of under your belt. How's that transition been? Obviously you gained a tremendous amount of HR recruiting experience in the Navy. But got to be some big differences between that and sort of the private sector. Is that right?
Yes, huge differences, and challenging in some ways and less challenging in others. I feel like convincing an individual or even their parents to allow their son or daughter and to go into harm's way is a much different prospect than what I do with at Pride Staff. In fact, I think quite the opposite. I'm usually trying to look out for the welfare of my temporary associates or direct hires, and really trying to work with companies that are not cutting corners, that are very looking at mitigating workers' comp issues and that sort of thing that are OSHA compliant. And so definitely different perspectives and different approaches to take. There's a lot of similarities in that while I was with the Navy and Navy recruiting, the same exact sales system is the same exact sales system that Pride Staff uses currently, but they also use CRMs, and so there's different CRMs that Pride Staff uses than the Navy. The Navy uses Salesforce, and like a lot of companies do, Pride Staff uses Bullhorn, and it's just a matter of just learning the differences. But it's been great to have a scoped down responsibility instead of having to worry about 6,000 folks. It's now just 3 additional folks, and it's also great to have a lot more autonomy. There's very few things I have to go to the franchisor for. There's a lot of autonomy that I have on my own, and
yeah, that's a big difference from the Navy, right? There's a chain of command. There's sort of a way of doing things. That's a red tape to kind of do things a little bit off script there.
Right.
Yeah.
I also appreciate, so it's both ends. In the Navy, it was really the Navy's the customer that I was trying to staff and source for. On this end, I'm trying to recruit and retain the best talent, but for companies, I'm also looking to seek out good clients to align these opportunities with. And it's been gratifying because usually with the Navy, it's 18 months to 2 years is the longest you're spending in one spot, and then it's time to move on. I'm excited to be in North County, San Diego, and being able to make connections with the local business community and being able to help folks out.
I have to imagine, even with all that recruiting and staffing experience that you had, that coming into the private sector, and it's a business model, different business model now, different approach, and different software tools. That you have to rely on sort of some of the team that's in place to kind of help you kind of get coached up and to a place where you can be an effective leader. Can you say more about the team that you're working with there?
Sure. So, I mean, in the intro, you highlighted several different accolades the office has won, and I really have to give all the credit to the team. Leilani is my branch manager, and she's been with the office for almost 6 years. She hails from Oceanside and had previous construction management background. Leilani has a really unique way of connecting with a variety of job seekers and clients. There aren't too many folks that can talked to a variety of folks from different professions, but she's very well versed, and she genuinely cares about improving your circumstances. I also think from experiences I've had with her, she's an out-of-the-box thinker, and she often comes up with creative solutions to motivate the team while maintaining accountability. She also always tries to get to yes for both the associates and the clients, and so I've really appreciated having her as the branch manager. Miriam, she recently stepped into my staffing consultant role, and she's been with the office for over 10 years. She hails from Vista, and she came to us from UEI, and happens to also be bilingual. When I first took over, Miriam was kind of a fairly reserved recruiter assistant, but since then she's really blossomed, taking on more and more responsibilities and challenges. I think because of her years of experience and her positive attitude, she handles all sorts of complex tasks and makes it look easy. Payroll is one of those things that you have to get right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You don't get people paid on time. You make mistakes in their checks. The relationship's going to sour pretty fast. Say more about the role that the Pride Staff franchisor has kind of played in helping you kind of get up to speed and feel comfortable about the business. What value are they providing?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Edith. She's the newest member of the team. She just joined last month. She hails from Vista as well, and she's also quickly learning the recruiter assistant role. She's also bilingual and has been a great addition to the team. But getting back to your question on the franchisor, I think one of the things that I did prior to Pride Staff is I did look into HR consulting just on my own, and aside from the experience of being able to talk to folks, being able to help them, there's a lot of doing everything on your own and figuring things out on your own, coming up with your own business plan. And while that's freeing, it's also kind of daunting. And so doing my homework on the different competing franchise staffing agencies, Pride Staff was one that really spoke to me. It really presents as a family environment. And they were really great about letting me actually go out to Fresno, to the headquarters, getting to kind of talk with all of the upper management. And on a daily basis, like I said before, there's not a whole lot that I have to constantly ask for permission on a daily basis. But when there are thorny workman's comp issues or other things like that, they're in the background to support. And so they've been a ready resource.
That's terrific. So I didn't realize you kind of shopped around. It wasn't like it was just the Pride Staff opportunity fell in your lap and you're like, oh, okay, this is where we go. It's like, no, you did your research. You did your due diligence to look into the different franchise systems, and Pride Staff was the one that really felt comfortable to you.
It is. I think it certainly helps that, when I am doing my due diligence, looking at the different franchises, I wanted to go to one that actually values my background and my service. And about a month after I purchased my Pride Staff location, Pride Staff was ranked by Entrepreneur Magazine as a top franchise for veterans for its seventh consecutive year. And so that was definitely a determining factor. When you look at the amount of awards, so my office has won consistently a number of awards, but the Pride Staff franchise has been awarded, clearly rated best of staffing for all three possible areas: client, employee, and talent satisfaction. That spoke a lot to me as well. I wanted to work with a company where I wouldn't definitely be working from I wanted to work from the ground up, but I didn't want to have to build a brand on my own. And Pride Staff is one of those brands that is fairly recognized and awarded for it.
So Tell us, Bob, about the services that you provide. I don't know if you're doing, temporary, temp to hire, direct hire, like what specific industries are you serving, what size companies? Kind of paint a picture for us here.
Okay. So we offer the full spectrum of staffing solutions. We do temporary, we do temp to hire, we also do direct hire. It really depends on what the client's needs are. And as you mentioned, our mission is to consistently provide clients with what they value most. And so we really start from the client's perspective. Again, this is where, given my own experience in recruiting, I think I told you that I didn't really have the best start with sales when I first started out. I don't think I mentioned this, but when I went through Navy recruiting school before going to Minneapolis, they actually gave us a personality profile and the Myers-Briggs test. And I tested out as an introvert, and I got pulled aside in class and was told, sorry, you're really going to struggle with this because you're an introvert, and the best salespeople are extroverts, and so sorry about that. Just be aware of it, and you're going to need to make sure that you work extra hard on this. So knowing that I was terrible at sales and that I'm an introvert, I was really excited going into Minneapolis. The funny thing is, the tour after that, after really recognizing it was a sink or swim opportunity where I just had to figure out how to make it happen. The tour after that, I went to the Naval Postgraduate School where I got my MBA. They tested, they gave me the Myers-Briggs as well, and I tested out as an extrovert. And before you start thinking that my personality widely swings, I was a borderline introvert, and I tested as a borderline extrovert. And so I think what I learned from that whole opportunity is that if you give yourself over to the process, there's opportunities for growth, there's opportunities for change, and I think if I can do it, anybody can do it. But getting back to Pride Staff, I think what really...
Sorry, before we get back to Pride Staff for a moment, Bob, sorry to cut you off, because this is a really important point, and I want to celebrate this a bit, because I think as human beings, sometimes we get stuck in sort of this fixed mindset of, right? I'm terrible at sales. I'm always going to be terrible at sales. I'm an introvert. Introverts are not going to be good at sales. And you could insert sort of different descriptors here. Say, I'm not good at sports. I'm not good at math. I'm not, I'm not a people. Whatever it is, you can sort of put yourself into a box and say, well, that's just how I'm always going to be because that's the way that I am now. And I think what your story really highlights is we're malleable, right? When we put the effort forward, when we put ourselves into these more uncomfortable situations, that's where we really allow for growth to take place. And that's, your story is emblematic of that.
Absolutely. I found that I learned the sales process. I learned the scripts, but none of those really were me. And so where I found the most success in recruiting, in Navy recruiting, and also with Pride Staff is starting with listening, building a relationship. And I found the more that I listened to the people I'm genuinely trying to help, the better the outcome would be. So instead of trying to do the typical sales hard sell, taking a round peg, trying to jam it into a square hole, where it's not necessarily what the applicant or the client wants, but it's what the organization needs to make happen. That's just building in turnover and transition. And so I'd rather enter with the right starting point of trying to figure out what is it that you find most valuable, what is it that you want the most out of this opportunity, and that's exactly how Pride Staff's geared. And so I think from that perspective, it's just been gratifying to be able to work with lots of, you had asked about the profile of the customers that we serve. We work with a lot of small to medium businesses. We do work with some larger businesses as well, but I think it's typically the small to medium customers that really value their personnel. because they're smaller, they can't afford to spend a lot on turnover and friction. Because they're smaller, there's also not a whole lot of room to hide mediocrity. So they want to make sure that they're getting the full value of their employees. And they just don't want to be in a cycle of hire and fire. One of the greatest compliments, but also one of the biggest challenges that I have, because my office has been around for over 26 years, when I visit old dormant clients, they'll usually tell me, I've heard this repeatedly, we love Pride Staff. You guys do such a phenomenal job. In fact, the person that you sent us 3 years ago, they're still on board our team, and thank you. You'll be the first call when we need somebody, but sorry, I think you did too good of a job, honestly. So, yeah, it's very.
If somebody's not going to give you an order for, some personnel, that's the reason that you want to hear is
exactly.
Last time we hired you guys, it worked out so well.
Yep.
We're not having that turnover.
Yeah,
that's great. So been at this 10 months. Obviously, you did your due diligence sort of getting into before making the decision to proceed. Anything that surprised you in particular after you acquired the franchise and sort of got in there and looked under the hood?
So I will say when I first took over in October, I was hearing a lot from clients of, well, there's a lot of uncertainty depending on what happens with the election. We'll be in touch, but there are a lot of folks kind of hedging their bets. That has morphed into there's a lot of uncertainty with tariffs and other things, and so there are folks that are uncertain and kind of hedging their bets. I guess what has surprised me is just how resilient my team has been, but also how determined and focused they can be. And I think a lot of the clients that have stuck with us as well have really gotten to get full value out of our relationship. There have been ones we've really tried to work hard to make sure that it's a mutually beneficial relationship. Trying to phrase this appropriately, but I guess in taking over from the previous owner, I was just looking over contracts and just looking at where we were at. I guess a regular annual contract review wasn't a thing, and so that's something that I had to work with each client to let them know, look, we haven't, over the past 5 years, we haven't adjusted anything for inflation. We haven't adjusted for FUTA and SUTA, and so there's just costs that do go up. And I think there's definitely a relationship you want to maintain, but at the end of the day, it is a business, and you need to be able to stay in business. And so I think just being able to kind of add some discipline and rigor to some of the processes.
Were those some hard conversations to have with customers? If they've sort of gotten comfortable with their rates being where they were for the last 5 years, and now that here comes the new guy and he's saying, yeah, we got to revisit this.
Yes. There were definitely some difficult conversations, and yet there were some really great clients that I even had some clients that came back and said, wow, this is really fair. You could have really hiked things on us, but I appreciate your transparency. I appreciate where you're at, and those clients are still with us. There are some that I think we're thinking that just because of the years that we've had a relationship, that somehow I could magically offer some kind of discount for that. And at the end of the day, I just needed to keep us solvent.
Yeah. I'm sure that, kind of introducing some of those new processes and, turning the dials. Obviously, you don't have to reinvent the wheel because it's been a very successful franchise for a number of years. I'm kind of curious, maybe from a growth perspective, if in the time that you've been there, you've had ideas that you want to implement, or you've been able to start introducing some new ideas on, hey, how can we do more work with our existing customers or go and find new customers and kind of get our name out there a little bit more?
Yes. So I think something that was often overlooked and still until we started talking about it is I think there are a lot of businesses that see the cost or the expense associated with using a staffing agency, but don't realize the cost benefits to using a staffing agency in times of uncertainty. Like now is one of the best times to use a staffing agency. As a business owner, I think I'm constantly mindful of unemployment insurance and the hikes that happen when you have lots of turnover. If you're a business that's either growing or shrinking and you use a staffing company, then you don't have to take that hit. And so that's where companies like mine can come in and help you grow or scale appropriately. I think that just making folks more aware. So I shared the feedback that I had gotten about some of our dormant clients not utilizing us because we did too good of a job filling their need before. That's not widely known, I think, and so just trying to get that out there to a lot of folks. I think just creating more awareness, I think.
Bob, how would you characterize your superpower?
I would. It's funny when I ask other folks. I'm frequently told that I'm unflappable. There are a few folks that have seen me kind of get riled up about a lot of things, and I attribute that to a variety of factors. I definitely think faith again comes into it, but I think having a difficult situation growing up without a mother, some other challenges. I think enlisted boot camp. I think going through the Naval Academy. I think a little over a year long tour in Iraq. I think all of those things help shape what's worth getting excited about or changing perspectives on things. And definitely the experience on board Cushing.
I have to imagine losing your mother at the age of 2. I mean, that just has rippling effects throughout your life. Were there, obviously, you mentioned your dad a couple of times. He was a big force in your life. Were there other family members, extended family members around who were able to kind of step in and help out with things?
Unfortunately for my oldest sister, Geetha, she pretty much had to kind of take on a lot greater responsibilities. We had an aunt that lived with us and took care of us for several years, but ultimately, I think it was a lot of growing up quicker than probably most kids should.
Yeah. Are there any daily habits or practices, maybe even rituals that, Bob, either help to get you started in the day, help keep you on track as you're going along?
I would say both faith and fitness. So I definitely like taking the morning, taking time out of each day to get centered and to get my mind right. But then it's also important to especially as I get older, to keep my body in shape as well. I feel like when I don't do those things, there have been times with the previous job as commodore, I was traveling quite a bit, and it was hard to be disciplined about making time for either one of those things. And I feel like the day just doesn't. I feel like things are a little off when I don't make time for those things.
How about recommendations for our listeners in terms of a resource that's been helpful to you? Maybe it's a book, a podcast, a network, a course, something that very helpful in sort of your personal or professional development that other folks might get benefit from.
So other than this podcast, I would recommend there's a book by Brett Crozier called Surf When You Can. and it's an excellent book on leadership, but it's also a masterclass in professionalism. You may recognize the name. He was a former Theodore Roosevelt carrier CEO during COVID, and ended up in the news with some really tumultuous impacts on his career, and he's just an amazing individual to have served with, but also just to read about.
Bob, what's one thing you wish more people understood about the staffing industry?
I think I hit on this before, but I think in investing in the right talent, if you don't invest in the right talent, I think a lot of people see it as a huge expense in the short term, but over the long term, I think it far outweighs the cost of mediocrity and turnover. And I think people get stuck in this mindset of, well, I want to hire people that don't have other options, so they'll stay with me for a long period of time. And maybe they don't have all the best skills, but at least they're not leaving me. Instead of going for somebody who might have other options and could leave for the next best thing, but stays with you because you've made it a great place to work. And so I think it was Bill Gates that had said, take our 20 best people away and I'll tell you that Microsoft will become an unimportant company. I found that to be true in my Navy career and in this career. I think if you invest in the right people, that really makes or breaks your team.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who kind of gave me a similar piece of advice early on in my career. And because I had the same sort of thing, I would find some good folks. I would help to develop them, invest in their education, their learning, and then get nervous that they were going to leave. And all of that time invested in the great relationship that we have is going to go to waste. And somebody kind of helped me reframe it and was like, that should be like your proud dad day. That you have helped that person move along in their personal development and their career development. And now this is a type of graduation. And it's, if you treated them well and you've been good to them, this isn't a time for sad reflection. It's happy reflection. It's, hey, go spread your wings, go to the next chapter of your life and stay in touch. Let me know how I can be helpful. And so just sort of that abundance mindset I found was really helpful in kind of flipping the script for me.
Mm-hmm.
Bob, I've just got one more question for you, but before I ask it, I want to do two things. First of all, everyone listening today, go ahead and hit the follow button on your favorite podcast app. We've had a great interview here today with Bob Reddy, who owns the Pride Staff Carlsbad, California franchise location. Got to hear a lot about his meteoric rise through the Navy and his near-death experience. I want you to continue to get more great stories like this. And Bob, I also want to let people know the best way to get in touch with you directly or to continue following your story. What would that be?
Aside from LinkedIn, I can be reached at our public phone number, 760-438-0161.
Great. And we'll put that information in the show notes. So, Bob, we've had a great conversation today. I hope you and I stay in touch. A year from now, we're sitting down and you're celebrating something. What is that something? What's that one thing that you're excited about?
So I'm happy to say, and hopefully Katie don't kill me for this, my oldest daughter, Katie, is expecting in September. And so I'm hoping to be celebrating first grandchild's birthday. My wife, Sally Reddy, just recently took a leap of faith in helping my business, but also stepping out on her own. She has launched her own solo law practice. And so I'm hoping to be able to celebrate her first year of successful practice. And then for my team, I'm really hoping to be able to celebrate another President's Circle win.
I love it. Bob Reddy from Pride Staff Carlsbad, I want to be the first to thank you for sharing both your time and your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Anthony. It's really been a pleasure.
Folks, that's a wrap on another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with us today.